Today, we're taking a deep dive into the gun violence epidemic. On Monday, President Biden is set to meet with police and community groups at the White House on the issue. And today, yet another shooting and manhunt is making headlines. Police in Minnesota are searching for a suspect who shot and killed a father and Little League coach, Jay Boughton, while he was driving his teenage son home from a baseball game. Authorities are now searching for his killer. And we're getting a new statistic in now. So far this year, every 18 hours in the United States, a person has been injured or killed in a suspected road rage shooting.
Just incredible. And this comes after a deadly 4th of July holiday around this country. As many as 150 people were shot dead in at least 450 acts of gun violence across the U.S. just last weekend. Joining us now to break down why America's cities and law enforcement are having trouble stopping this surge in violence, MARQ CLAXTON, director of the Black Law Enforcement Alliance, Michael Sean Spence with EVERYTOWN for gun safety, and Daniel Webster, director of the Johns Hopkins Center for Gun Policy and Research. Thank you all for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Good to be with you.
Daniel, put this into historic perspective here. When you look at the statistics, how unprecedented is this surge in gun violence?
Well, we honestly have not seen the rate of increase in gun violence that we've seen over at least between 2019 and 2020. We have seen higher overall levels of gun violence, but what is particularly concerning is how rapidly it's going up, and certainly some cities are seeing record levels of gun-related violence.
Michael, what do we know about what's causing this spike right now? And are there particular communities that are being more affected than others?
Well, what we know now is that COVID-19 has exacerbated many of the underlying factors of gun violence. We're talking about housing insecurity, food insecurity, income inequality, many issues which have been rooted in the same communities that are not only experiencing the highest COVID infection rates, but the disproportionate impact of gun violence and the recent surge. And we know that Black and brown communities, they also have groups who have been responding to this violence for decades who are also under-resourced, and we need to provide the necessary resources so they can get back to their life-saving efforts.
And Mark, unfortunately, Chicago is always that city that we focus on and look at when it comes to gun violence. In that city, the police superintendent says that 36 officers have been shot at this year. How are departments around the country grappling with violence against police officers?
I think the departments around the country, especially the departments that operate in some of the larger cities, where much of this spike in gun violence is being shown, they are operating very carefully. I think what we have to be mindful of is that the deployment of resources and the implementation of these different initiatives really addresses the problem. Too often we have this conversation about gun violence, and we look for legislation that deals with bans on assault weapons, for example, and understandably because of the amount of people that can be injured and killed by assault weapons. But in the inner cities, in these large municipal areas, what you're finding is that the level of handgun violence is significant and is what's driving this huge increase. So we have to be mindful and honest about exactly what it is we're trying to attempt to police and regulate. So the focus on handguns should be primary, and legislation and initiatives coming out of those cities should be focusing on those items.
And Daniel, I want to piggyback on that point because the Justice Department is also rolling out a new effort to crack down on illegal gun trafficking, focusing on 5 cities: New York, Chicago, LA, San Francisco, and DC. What do you make of that approach, and what else needs to be done here?
Well, I think it's a very appropriate role for the federal government, an important role for the federal government to play here. Look, local law enforcement in Chicago, Baltimore, New York, they have their hands full addressing dangerous people who have guns, but they have very limited capacity to address the pipeline of the supply of guns to people who are too dangerous to have them. And so I think it's very appropriate that there be more resources and focus at the federal level, focusing on these trafficking channels. Guns do not sprout from the ground or drop from the sky. There are a supply chain. They can and be interrupted effectively if you apply the right resources and the right of focus in a focused manner.
And Michael, what do community-based groups see as the solution here, specifically to reducing gun violence in cities?
Well, community-based organizations, they're implementing a number of effective strategies. We're talking about street outreach work, hospital-based violence intervention programs. Many are collaborating with law enforcement in cities to implement group violence intervention. And the crux of all of those strategies that make them effective is the focus on the people and the places where the highest levels of gun violence are occurring. And allowing those folks who are from those communities to leverage the trust and credibility that they've developed to engage those who are at risk of shooting or being shot, to help hopefully connect them with support services to change their trajectory. And what we really need in this moment, and we've heard this directly from folks on the front line of reducing gun violence in their cities, is additional investment. And fortunately, the White House has messaged that is on the way, but we need to sustain these effective efforts and allow them to continue their life-saving work.
All right, Mark Claxton, Michael Sean, Spence, and Daniel Webster, we appreciate the analysis today, gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to be with you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.